Good morning. We'll give everyone a couple of minutes to get into the webinar. Just giving everyone a little bit of time to get into the webinar. Good morning. Welcome to Click-12, a webinar series that we at FIU Online have put together for you, our teachers. My name is Leah Provolis, Interim Assistant Vice President of FIU Online, Education Advocate and parent of elementary school-age children. At FIU Online, we value education and the quality of the student experience, all while delivering instruction where the student and the instructor may be separated by time, space, or both in the culmination of our fully online courses. The separation of time and or space from our students is something that educators were faced with overnight this past spring, when due to COVID, our school campuses were made unavailable to us to deliver instruction. And yet, as the true heroes in education, you did it. Many of you graduated your kindergarten classes virtually or sent off your high school seniors with virtual graduations. And now, here we are, nearing the end of summer, your much needed time off. And over 3,100 of you and your peers are signed up for this series. That truly speaks to your dedication. What we hope we can share with you during our time together are valuable best practices and guidelines that we have picked up in our over 20 years in distance learning. These tips and tools will intentionally be presented to you through a K-12 lens. Through your journey this coming year, remind yourself, this is a pivotal time in the world and in history, full of uncharted territory. Be kind to yourself in those challenging moments. Know that your students are truly lucky to have you in their corner. Before I hand it over to our presenter, I wanted to remind you of a couple of Zoom features you have available to you today, right here at the bottom of your Zoom window. We encourage you to use the Q&A in the chat, which are labeled just that. We look forward to answering as many questions as we can during the presentation right there in the Q&A. And use the chat. Interact with the community of support that you are surrounded by today. Now let's welcome our presenter, Karina Ocampo, who will share with us today how to structure your virtual classroom.
Thank you, Leah. And good morning. Welcome to .org, Structuring the Virtual Classroom webinar. As Leah mentioned, I'm Karina Ocampo, and I'm an Instructional Design Manager at Florida International University with FIU Online. I'm going to be spending the next bit of time with you to discuss some ideas you can hopefully make your own for the upcoming school year. But first, let's get to know each other a little bit. Here's an all-important poll question I'd like to ask each of you. So the team is going to pull up a short poll that asks, where would you rather be? So I put up 4 choices for you: a spa, relaxing, looking over the mountains, at your favorite band's concert, hiking, being surrounded by nature, or even back in 2019, Which would you rather be? So go ahead and have the Zoom poll is pulled up on your screen. Select what you'd rather be doing. All summer, you know, when all of this started, where's your happy place? I really want to know. So go ahead and make your votes, you know, because that's what we all need right now. It's just kind of a little escapism from what's happening. And I just, you know, these are the happy spots for me. All right, I'll give you a few more moments to decide before I close it up. And okay, I think we can close it up and start sharing the results. So let's take a look. Ooh, spa. Okay, so that was my winner too. I completely agree with the spa. And out hiking, second place, that is also my happy place. I love being surrounded by trees, and it feels like it's the safest thing to do right now anyway. So going out to parks and things like that, and concert, and I love the 2019, right? It's way back when things seemed so much easier. How amazing. So, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and close that poll. And now that we've had a mini mental break to reset our heads, let's move forward. I'm a Florida educated educator, having been all over the state for programs and degrees. I became a fourth grade teacher in North Miami Beach the year 3 hurricanes hit, including Katrina, and we struggled all year to figure out how to make up those missing hurricane days. I thought that was the hardest logistical school year ever. I wish that's what we were dealing with right now. I later taught 5th grade reading and science and became the school's reading coach. But what that first year did teach me, and every year after, was that the ever-changing, challenging landscape that is K-12 public education prepares you for anything. And so now we must prepare for starting a school year during a pandemic. I know we can do it, and I hope to show you how to do it as realistically as possible. So now I'd like to get to know you a little bit. The team is going to pull up a short poll again, so I can see the fellow educators out there and what population you are serving. So we'll get that poll up in just a moment. There it is. So who's in the audience? Are you an elementary educator, middle school educator, K-8 educator, high school? Are you an administrator? Or maybe I didn't include quite one of these. So go ahead and select what role you play in the K-12 education system, so we can get an idea of who's in the audience. All right, so go ahead and try to match yourself up to the most appropriate role. I'll give it another moment or so. Okay, let's go ahead and close that poll and share those results. Awesome. So we have a ton of elementary educators, high school educators, middle school is right there, K-8. The administrators are also showing up, thank you. And not quite one of those. I wish I could have an interaction with you to find out where I missed it, but I'm glad I included it to know that you know, you always want to include that other kind of option. So wow, we can see a lot from everywhere. Let's go ahead and close that poll. Thank you. Each of you has your own unique set of challenges. Elementary is represented, high school, everybody, it's all over. So my mom is a retired kindergarten teacher, having taught only kindergarten for 27 years. And we were talking the other day about how do you start 5-year-olds online that have never even stepped inside a school. And now they need to meet their classmates and teacher online, maybe even more than one teacher. How do we tackle that? And I thought back on my years in the classroom, and I thought that at least when the students came to me in the 4th and 5th grades, they already had school experiences, peer interactions, knew how to behave in a classroom for the most part. I relied so much on what the younger grade teachers did to prepare those students for entering my classroom. This start to the school year is not an ideal situation, but it's the one we're dealt, and going virtual is the safest alternative we have. I don't have a magical answer to that kindergarten question. I wish I did. I just know that this year is going to be tough. So all I can do is hope we all reserve more patience, flexibility, and understanding for our students, their parents, and especially for ourselves. We always seem to leave ourselves out. Everyone is living through this extremely unique situation and historic time. So again, I hope today's information can be adapted by you and your unique situation to help you find success. I also wanted to take this time to show you the ease of using Zoom polls. for those of you readying your Zoom sessions or whatever virtual, I'm saying Zoom, but whatever virtual meeting space you have. They're quick, they're painless, and they help engage with your students. Don't shy away from them, embrace them, experiment with them. Your students will appreciate you trying something new, especially when it may not come out perfect. And that's gonna just remind them that you're human, just like them. And just a little secret on my part, this was my first time using Zoom polls with you all, and I think it went pretty well. So thank you for sharing that experience with me. Last year may have left you feeling like this. I'll leave you to interpret Beaker's expression here. Maybe some helpful descriptions are exasperated, flustered, overwhelmed over the way the year ended with so much out of our control. We were getting pulled in all sorts of directions. It was a very interesting time. And now, what we do know is that back to school will look different. We have to recognize that the only constant is change, as we've been seeing, reading, and living for the past 5 months. Changes just keep coming our way. So how do we go from this to this? From Beaker to Bunsen? This webinar is aiming to clear out that out of control feeling and give you back a sense of control over the upcoming school year. And like Olaf says in Frozen 2, which has been on loop in our house during this quarantine with my 2-year-old, thank you Disney Plus so much for releasing it early. We're calling this controlling what you can when things feel out of control. So how do we start gaining some control back? We start by creating a communication plan. You may remember from your university days, the course syllabus that your instructor shared with you on the first day of class. It was like 20 pages of information. Or remember way back in the beginning of the 2019-2020 school year, when everything was perfect, right? And we didn't have a single problem. Those welcome letters and supplies lists you shared with your students and their parents, that was like 1 to 2 pages. This is what I'm comparing this communication plan to. It's a document that lets your students and their parents know what they can expect for the coming year. What are you going to expect from them and what they can expect from you? And it's somewhere in between those page lengths, whatever works for you. We want to approach this plan to allow learning from every mode because we don't know what the school year is going to look like. And we're most likely going to use every mode at some point this year. That's the reality. So we need to start now with thinking and creating our communication plan. When starting to write your plan, remember, it should serve as a guide. It's not trying to be set in stone, but rather how you plan on communicating the important stuff to your students. It should detail what's expected between you and the student. It helps to set the tone for the school year by showing your students and parents that you've put some intention behind your approach and you're exhibiting forethought, which goes a long way to putting students' minds at ease. They thrive with structure, and if you can provide structure for whichever contingency may arrive, you're more likely to have success with your students in the coming school year. Your plan may include what you see on this slide here: expectations, communication, grading, late policy, engagement, along with any other items that you want to focus on. But remember, it's a guide, and it should be more fluid than rigid. That's why I made an example of a live communication plan in a Google Doc, which is free when you create a Google account, and which I plan on sharing after this presentation so that you can just have an example. It's so much easier to work off of an example than trying to create something from scratch. And since I already did the work, I want to share it with you so that you can just, delete, add whatever you want. I suggest using online tools like Microsoft 365 or Google to allow for live updates, because there will be changes and they may come fast. So you want them seen as soon as possible. And I hope to ease your mind by letting you know that you can set the live document to view only mode so that others can't edit it. Now I'm going to use the think aloud strategy to share the thinking that I had behind creating this document. Notice it's organized by class title, Ms. Ocampo's 5th grade science class. This is so that it's clear, students know they're in the right spot, you know you're in your right spot because you can be managing multiple classes, multiple periods, whatever the case may be. It's then followed by a quick welcome to the course and types of communication to expect. I mentioned to expect changes. This helps to set the tone for students that they can already expect this and get a little bit more comfortable with the uncomfortable. The communication plan also includes links and updates. The links are to the communication tools like Remind that I have decided to use for this course. I also included links to demonstrations of the tools I'm using, so it's easy for students and parents to see it in action. There are expectations set on this page for both me as the teacher and for the students. I'll read some out loud to you that I've written for the students that they can expect from me as their teacher. For example, they know I'll log in every day promptly at 8:05 or whatever time the school day starts. They'll get a response from me within 2 school days. Graded assignments will be returned to them within 5 school days after the due date. Obviously, this is what works for me. It may not work for you. This is what can change, but it's helping set that boundary, that expectation, that tone, so students know expectations, which goes a long way. And then some expectations I have from them, the student, to watch my welcome video at least once. And I do encourage welcome videos if you can. Notice the link to the video is right in the plan. And if you watched Michael's Teachflix webinar last week, you got some great ideas for how to create amazing videos from the comfort of your own home. And the recording is available if you missed it. We'll include links later on or show you how to do it or how to access it. I am also expecting them to log in promptly every day at 8:05 a.m. to review their calendar, add their name, date, assignment topic to every submission, follow the due dates, or their grade is going to be lower by 10 points every 2 days it's late. I'm a super strict teacher. Well, I'm allowing late work, so that's something. And for them to learn their student ID number. So on later pages that we'll take a look at, it identifies a schedule that includes course topics, assignments, and due dates. The beauty of a live plan is that it does not have to be completely ready on day one, but it's a start for you and your students to feel consistent in your teaching and their learning. You're already setting a standard of communication for your community that will help ease the back to school jitters. Also, chances are you experienced communication challenges at some point last year. Reflect on those challenges as you start creating this guide. Was it that you kept getting emails asking the same questions from different students? Consider you could create a general questions discussion area in the learning platform you're using that allows others even to help jump in with the answer. It does not all have to be on your shoulders. You know, there are other students out there that can help out. This is also helpful when you review the questions that have been included in that general questions discussion to see how you can improve providing guidance to your students to help them before they even have to ask that question. So think about those recurring questions that you experienced and see if you can preemptively address them in this plan. Make the communication plan flexible. When you're intentional about building in flexible components from the start of the year, students' experiences will be better. They'll understand the changes and that pivots are a given for this year. And it allows for some mental wiggle room for your students and yourself. Again, use either Google Docs or the Microsoft 365 tools to allow for live edits, to allow for the most flexible communication plan. Though, you know, something that's very cumbersome is if you created something as a Word doc or you PDF'd it and you posted it somewhere, you always have to, upload a new version. And that can get tedious and that can get old and you don't know which version is up. So do yourself a favor and make it on a document that shares the most up-to-date information. This is one of the ways this document is flexible. You can make changes on the fly because you know your students have access to the link and they can quickly access those changes. They're not having to search for emails that say, here's another update or review this document, but it isn't clear in just the subject line what it's addressing. And here's a pro tip. Highlight the changes as you see here on the screen so they're clearly visible to the viewer and lessens any confusion. Notice how these updates are numbered here and the most recent ones are on top with a strike through of the earlier ones, just to continue keeping everyone on the same page. You can follow this pattern, but really what I'm trying to say is just make it front and center. This numbering technique was useful at our university when our external relations department kept updating us with the latest coronavirus information about remote learning, remote work, what was going on. By the time we got to update number 22, I knew that I could count on always being informed, which provided me comfort. And that's what we all need some more of right about now. And for you as a teacher with dozens of students, these techniques may even prevent some emails and messages from coming your way, which I know we can all welcome. The communication plan should also provide an overall structure. In the second page of the communication plan, I started building out the first 9 weeks of graded assignment. You'll notice there's some built-in flexibility here too, with to be determined placeholders. The most important part to note is that everyone knows there are assignments due with these naming conventions that should be submitted in a specific location. I'm communicating from the beginning what's expected, by when it's expected, and where students can submit. I'm also showing them where they can expect to find this kind of information so that they can get used to navigating to this communication plan from day one. This helps focus their attention. And if you do create a general questions area, those students that pay attention from the first day, thank goodness for them, right? So helpful. They can also help you out virtually by helping answer those navigation types of questions for those students that catch up by day 3, 5, whenever they wake up. And when we return to the classroom, you may add here that the submission area is in the classroom so that everyone knows what was submitted where. This is going to go a long way when we're foggy a month from now about what happened. Make the communication plan easily available. Broadcast it on the first day of class. Email it, post it, send it as a link in a text message. Remember, your plan is a beacon. Remind students and parents how and when you'll be communicating. Keep that communication consistent. Initially, I know it's going to involve some extra work, but as soon as something changes, you'll be glad you made the effort. And things will change. So having something that stays the same will be very welcomed by students and the future version of you. And here's another pro tip. In either the email or the app you're using, add helpful information to your signature. Like please allow for Tuesday's school response time, adding a link to the communication plan. This will help you avoid unnecessary repetitive questions from students and parents. It's always right there. They understand. They know what to click on. They know what to expect as a response. And to finish up talking about the communication plan, always make sure this plan includes thinking about learning in the classroom, at home, and the blending of the two environments. For those of you that participated in Gabby Alvarez's Blending, Flipping, and Digitizing Your Classroom webinar, you heard some excellent strategies for online and hybrid models of instruction. For those of you that missed it, recording is available. You can definitely watch it at your leisure. But to start, organize your online content. That's the most different from what you've experienced, and it's most likely how your school year is going to start online. Then think about how you can combine your online chunks with your face-to-face instruction. Keep in mind that your online learning environment should support your face-to-face instruction, and your face-to-face should support your online learning. When they complement each other, they're both stronger. So a suggestion for this reinforcement or an example of this reinforcement may be to have all assignments submitted digitally throughout the year. It keeps it organized, it keeps it consistent. Even when in the classroom, you could set up computer time to submit work. If this cannot be done, because I know that technology or the age of students may prevent this from being realistic, just make sure that you're posting it in the communication plan, that this week's assignment will be submitted in person, so there's a record of what was turned in what format. You're going to appreciate that later when you're trying to review work and graded work. Another suggestion could be to start recording your lesson lectures in short chunks, at least a couple of weeks ahead of when they're scheduled to be viewed by your students. Even when you do go back to your classroom, your students' homework could be to view that video at home and then come to class ready with questions. So it wouldn't be any kind of waste of time because you're using it no matter what environment you're in. All right, so let's discuss some strategies for structuring online instruction. At FIU, we use Canvas as our learning management system. or LMS, if you'll hear me call it LMS for short. There are many more, and some of the more common ones are Blackboard and D2L. LMSs, learning management systems, are all-encompassing, all-in-one instructional tools that allow for communication, assignment submissions, grading, pretty much anything you did in a classroom, but in a digital form. I had read that Broward Schools is using Instructure, which is another word for Canvas, and I believe Miami-Dade is using their own learning platform. So, take a look at which one your school system, wherever you may be, is using. So I'm going to show you some examples from the Canvas LMS, is what we use at FIU, and I'm biased towards it because it's definitely a more inviting, more intuitive LMS, but any of these applications can really, be shared with whatever learning platform you're using at your school, okay? So you wanna start off with a home page or a landing page, okay? That anchors your students and orients them to the LMS or whichever platform you're using. So as soon as the student logs in, they go into this General Biology 1 lab class and they see this welcome. It's a general welcome to the course. It lets the students know, yes, I'm in the right place. Kind of like if you're physically going into a classroom, you walk in and you see on the board written, this is French class. You're like, oh, no, wrong one. So this lets them know, okay, this is the class I'm supposed to be in. Then notice there's a getting started in your course section that shows you how to begin. You always want to create a path that shows your students what they should be doing next. Here, the instructor is asking students to proceed to the following, such as viewing the syllabus and the schedule, then checking out student resources, and finally clicking on the learning modules. There's always a sense of direction. Then there's also instructor information, which shares the preferred method of communication. For this instructor, for this course, it's email. And they also include a phone number with virtual office hours and a response turnaround time. It's whatever works for you that you want to include here. But again, it's contact communication. How do I reach out to make sure that I'm in the right track for this course, for this class, with this teacher? A quick pro tip, I've seen some instructors include auto reply messages. So a student sends them an email and automatically, without them even thinking, it's an auto reply that goes back out saying, hey, thanks for your email. I definitely got this. You can expect a more personal response in 2 days. This helps ease students' minds on whether their email was accurately sent or if it was lost to the abyss of electronic communication. Right? We sometimes get that feeling of you send it out, you don't hear anything back. You wonder, did it go? Did it send? Is it in my junk? Is it in my outgoing? Where is it? This helps ease that mind. So that's just a pro tip if you want to use it or not. You know yourself. Choose what makes the most sense for you. Here's another example of a landing page. Notice how this one has a welcome video. Again, welcome videos are engaging and interesting to students. And after watching Teachflix, you can make engaging videos using the stuff you already own. So there's also a section here called Quick Links, which I like. It includes an FAQ section, a how to get started section, among other helpful links specific to this instructor and this course. It has a different feel, it has a different look, but it pretty much includes those basics. How do you contact me? What is this course? Where do I go next? Remember, this is online. One of the great things about online is that you can add, edit, delete as you need to create the class you want. Keep your content organized. Keep your assessments organized. Keep them together. Organize your content into chunks, like units, topics, modules, or weeks. Create structure inside these chunks by including all elements of instruction. Like you want to include an introduction, resources, practice, feedback, assessments. Students should be able to find what they need in as few clicks as possible. And then keep that structure consistent. Once you build out a model you like, duplicate it for the next model and the next model. Students appreciate knowing what to expect. And you've already done the hard work of realizing how you like things organized. So just keep copying and pasting. And here's a pro tip. Think of a password system for your students to remember. For example, you could have their passwords set, default set to their student IDs, which you ask them to memorize in the introduction page of that communication plan. So full circle, it all comes back around. But this is going to help you because we all know that students have access to a whole bunch of computer applications and they're constantly asking you for passwords. So really think of a password management system that's going to help you help them know where to go, find their own answers, because you don't need to be spending your time constantly sending, Juan and Laura their passwords. This is what chunking information could look like. So again, this is inside of Canvas. This is a module. It's a topic all about human development. And notice all the links are in one screen. You've got your introduction, you've got your lectures, you've got your videos, you've got the assignments. It looks clean and complete. The students will not have the burden of not having navigation with a setup like this. The last thing you want is to have students trying to figure out, where do I go? How do I do this? How, where are the assignments? What is happening this week? It's clear. You can just be talking about it. It's human development. Click on that module, group it all together so that there's no question as to what to do next. Let's take this slide to really focus on naming conventions. And, for some of you, this may already be a given, but I do want to take some time here because you're so used to being in front of the classroom and being able to explain something in a moment. But when we're doing things online, you don't have that luxury all the time when students are at home trying to remember what you were talking about. So you want to be as consistent as possible in naming your assignments. You want to make sure that if you're calling an assignment, science worksheet number 2A questions, that's what you're calling it in the gradebook, in the assignment title area, in the announcement you're making for your students that week. As an instructional designer, having supported hundreds of courses, there have been so many questions that come up from students just about the lack of assignment title consistency. Students will get confused when you call it science worksheet number 2A questions in the module, and then in your announcement say, oh, this week's worksheet's questions, or the science questions in the gradebook. Call it the same thing everywhere. Copy, paste as much as possible. On the screen here, you'll notice I left the most descriptive titles and crossed out the more generic ones that could apply to so many other assignments. Again, I love copy and paste, Control C, Control V, those are the keyboard shortcuts. Use it, keep those naming conventions consistent. Students will not need to be asking you what's what. Now here's what consistent naming may look like in action. This again is a discussion area in Canvas. Notice it's clearly labeled and they're not very long, just specific. When you talk about parks discussion number 1 or discussion number 1 parks, discussion number 3, number 4, and you're including what it's talking about, the topic, there's not going to be any confusion here. So keep that in mind when you're naming your assignments. The next idea I want you to think about is to constantly evaluate your toolbox. It's now your digital toolbox. You did this in your classroom, so do it virtually as well. After completing a unit, reflect on the digital tools you used. Ask yourself, did I have the right tools for the task? Were students able to meet the instructional objectives? When we use the wrong tool, we know immediately. The objective falls flat. We move on and quickly. But when we use the right tool, it's invisible. It's easy, intuitive, it enhances instruction. We want to use it again. So review your toolbox. Deleting tools that don't work well for you and your students, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And keep in mind that just because your colleague is using a certain tool and it works for them in their classroom, it may not work for you, and that's okay. Try it out. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't. But always be evaluating what works for you and what you get into and what you're passionate about. Share that with your students. They love seeing that passion. It reminds them that there's something meaningful here. Which brings me to allowing yourself time to plan a discovery activity. A discovery activity allows students to learn how to use a tool before tackling content learning. It also allows teachers to have conversations about expectations from the start. Follow that I do, we do, you do model for these types of activities. You set it up, right? I set up the activity. I'm showing you how I'm using it. We all do it together. And then finally, I'm going to ask you to do it on your own. It really gets students comfortable with the task at hand. And use a low stakes task for students to practice using the tool. Inside a discovery, make sure you allow room for conversation. In this process of students talking to each other and to you, you can preemptively solve any problems before deploying the tool. If you don't know where to start, think about the top 3 tools you use in your classroom. Next, plan a discovery for each of those top 3 tools. Then think about, where can I embed those discoveries into my instruction? So here I included an example of the app Flipgrid. It can be used for a discovery activity. Some students haven't used this yet, and you don't want to assess them on their learning curve of that tool, but on the comprehension of the content you're trying to have them show you their understanding of through that tool. So allow them to play in the tool first before adding the pressure of getting graded on it. Which also leads to the next idea, to help students build peer relationships online. They're starting the school year online, so some of them are interacting with their peers for the first time virtually. Give them a real reason to be present. Build a positive classroom community by integrating digital citizenship lessons from commonsense.org or any website that you find that helps with positive classroom community lessons. Offer authentic learning experiences that build relationships during your Zoom sessions. Again, Zoom, virtual, whatever it is you're using. And think about assigning team roles to your students to help create a sense of purpose. Think about inviting guests to your virtual meetings. They can help students make those real world connections. And in this day and age, everybody's gotten so familiar with Zoom that having those guests come on board is easier than ever, I hope. The best relational activities are ones that allow students to shine as individuals. You might have students build an all about me Pinterest board or a Google slide. You can have them create a class scavenger hunt. And this was something I found really quick on a search, and I loved it. You know, you can review the results as a group. You can change this to whatever works for you, but notice it's an indoor scavenger hunt, an outdoor scavenger hunt. And it's just something fun, something that you get to know their personalities. You know, you get to know your students outside of just academia. You can get to know who they are. So let your students' personalities shine through. Get to connect with them in this physically distanced time. We want to make this virtual space something they look forward to, as a way to show a side of themselves they may not have had a chance to do in person. Another great thing about online is everyone participates a little more equitably. The more reserved personalities, the more outgoing personalities, they share their digital voices alike. And that's something to really embrace. Routines. So to finish up strategies for online instruction, create routines for yourself and for your students. Whether online or face-to-face, build a consistent routine for students with opportunities for choice and self-pacing. And I want to reiterate that. During this time of uncertainty, allowing for choice and self-pace can ease students' minds. I used to use 2 journal topics, right? When students would come in, the 5-minute bell rang, they start coming in, they get into their chairs, and they knew every morning when they came in, they'd look at the whiteboard, they would start reading the 2 journal topics, they'd make their choice, and they get right to work thinking and writing. We called it bell work. They knew the front door opened, they found their seats, they started thinking, writing, and it helped them with their transition from whatever was happening before to now it's class time. Was it always perfect? No, of course not. But it was a routine, it was a start to the day, and it was something to help students feel anchored. And they knew what to expect, which again, will go a long way during these times. And here's a routine for any environment. In the morning, ask your students to do 1, 2, 3. Check announcements, complete morning check-in, open module, and begin first task. Once you've decided what routine works best for you, illustrate these processes with a graphic organizer and post them inside the learning management system. In your physical classroom, when you return, attach them to announcements. Most important, minimize change as much as possible. Students need consistency now more than ever. Okay, so let's get into some of the tools that'll help you stay organized. I'm going to start off with some tools you can adapt as a teacher. Okay, so keep in mind, these next two tools are project management tools, and I am repurposing them as teacher tools, which is what I did as an instructional designer. I repurposed them to fit my day-to-day needs because honestly, what teacher is not also a project manager? We have so many things going on. It's really hard to stay organized. So this helped me. Also keep in mind, these tools have very robust free versions available, and those are the versions I'm sharing with you. All right, first, there's Trello. This one is my favorite and the one I used when managing over 50 courses per term. I loved it for its aesthetics and use of what they call these little cards to organize my work. You can color code them, you can expand them, and it includes all sorts of customizable checklists and upload options, and then they compress when I just need to see a bird's eye view of what I'm managing. It also has a visual directional flow, which I appreciated and helped keep me organized. So I think Trello realized they had something great in their organizational offerings, and they actually have a teaching weekly planning template ready for use and customization just for teachers. So this is helpful when you're managing multiple subjects, sets of students, in different periods. This will help you as a teacher in organizing your virtual setup, creating checklists, saving important links, to-do tasks, reminders, and getting to the granular level of organization. Now, I also love Trello because once I created a card and a subset of items, I can duplicate it to the other classes I'm teaching. It keeps me on track. It's not costing me any extra effort. So it would do great wonders for you. You take the time to really organize yourself on one, and then you copy paste, which is my favorite, to help keep you on track. Even if it's just for keeping track of your naming conventions, this is a tool that's going to help you kind of picture what's coming up and how to navigate what that looks like. Okay, Asana is another project management tool, a lot like Trello, easily customizable. You can duplicate your work. This one, and it's one of the reasons that I also like it, and I really do enjoy Asana as well. It offers a calendar view layout that you can choose if that's the way your teacher brain works. It also works a bit more granularly. So if you're very analytical, you may find this project management tool your style. Now, I started using Asana over Trello when I needed to get to that more granular level in OCD in my work. So it allowed for such specific customizations and due dates and assignments. I couldn't pass it up. So either way, Trello or Asana, you can't go wrong. They are great project management tools to use for your classes, and I highly recommend that you get comfortable with one of them. Another pro tip, you can make a PDF of a lot of these documents after you create them and share it with your class. For example, as soon as I saw my calendar option, I thought, this is perfect. I could write out what is expected every day for, August, September, October, and then I can print it out, PDF it, attach it, post it, share it with my class, and there's no question about what's due when. You can create a PDF by typically going through your print option on your computer or screen capturing the document. It's a pretty quick and painless thing to do, so search for it if you're not quite sure how to do it. Okay, so some examples of tools that you and your peers may be currently using for communicating with students and parents. These are also free. So I spoke with a lot of my teacher friends. I have a lot of family members that are also in K-12, and I asked them how they ended the year and what they used and what really they saw rise above the rest. And I wanted to share it with you. You may have already been using these, maybe you haven't, but I just wanted to put them out there to share because it's worked for your peers, your colleagues. The first one is Class Dojo, which has an adorable logo. After talking with a few teachers, and I also signed up for Class Dojo myself, it pretty much functions like a basic learning management system. It allows for communication, sharing of assignments, but it doesn't have grading built in. What I really liked about this application is the company sends out webinar links all the time, professional development opportunities, recordings for my convenience, and they're always saying, oh, the product got updated. They're doing that regularly. So if your school has yet to set up an LMS or learning platform, this is a good alternative to look into and get familiar with if you haven't already. This is, a look inside the box. Notice there's an activities area for assignments. I'm in the portfolio tab, which is where I can see everything that's going on with assignments. I have a students area with their information, so I can click on them and I can already have their information at my fingertips. A class story tab, which allows for posts to the classroom feed. So your students can share, you can share, upload pictures, upload videos, and then a messages tab for communication. Remind, I talked about it briefly when I was talking about the communication plan. I heard about this also as an amazingly helpful tool that I'm sure a lot of you have heard about and some of you may not have, so I really wanted to put it out there. It works more like WhatsApp. It's really for communication, reminding students what's approaching, what's due, etc. It limits the characters and focuses the messaging. So what I really appreciated about Remind is that it sends things as texts, which may be a lifeline for families who rely on mobile devices for access. Keep that in mind too. When structuring your online content, test out viewing it on your smartphone. See what that experience is like. So many people experience the internet through their smartphones. It'd be helpful to know what that experience is like for them and try to make it even more accessible for all students. So Remind, a lot of the upper grades really embrace this because it's just a quick communication tool between you and the parents or the students that isn't, you're not sharing your phone number, your personal phone number to communicate. Here's what the inside of this app looks like. I can message and add documents and links in this platform just to remind students what's approaching. So here I was already sharing with them an assignment tracker. And again, great tools to have. They have mobile apps, so you can have your teaching life compartmentalized as much as possible from your personal life apps. So just a look inside to see what it looks like. Pretty clean, pretty easy to get to. I really appreciated it. And to finish up with our tools discussion, here are the live tools I've been talking about. If your school provides access to one of these, I highly suggest you lean into them. They're really helpful for keeping your information, your communication, the most up-to-date it can be. And if your school provides an LMS or other learning platform, plan a discovery activity for yourself. Get in the groove of that technology. Remember, search online for questions you have. Set up time with a colleague. Swap assignment ideas. Talk about ways you're using this new tool. All right, so I end with this last content slide that is asking for you to focus on 3 things after this webinar. Write out your communication plan, preferably on a live doc, so that it's a living document, flexible, it has the latest up-to-date information, and remember to use consistent naming conventions. Get to know your school's learning management system or learning platform, or if they don't have one set for you yet, choose your communicator tool. And finally, choose your teacher tool to help keep you organized. So I want to thank you all for letting me share this time with you. It has truly been my privilege. K-12 educators, My heart is with you. I know it's going to be a school year for the history books, but I also know you all are an amazingly resourceful and resilient group of people. Remember, be kind to yourself, be kind to your students. We're all going through this, and thank you again. And I do want to mention, we have our upcoming webinar next week, which is August 12th, Wednesday, free 99, 9 low-cost, high-impact EdTech tools in 90 minutes with Michael Alendi. I hope you register and tune in.
Thank you, Karina, and thank you all for your participation in this series, which we're very passionate about. I mean, look at these stats, guys. 3,100 teachers registered, over 1,000 schools represented, 48 states, 34 countries. It's really overwhelming. And we, again, thank you everybody for participating. We'd like to announce sometime this month or even in early September, we will be hosting our first parent webinar aimed at helping parents support their learners at home. We would love for you to continue to share our initiatives with your K-12 networks, family, and friends. And from what I see in the chat, maybe a surprise Zoom session coming. So Karina, the chat and the Q&A were really active during your presentation. And we saved some questions that we think our learners would love to hear from you. So here's a couple.
Thanks.
You mentioned a lot of different great tools, and for some of them, there are some paid versions. Do you think that's worth it for our teachers?
You know what? That's a great question. And I constantly wondered if I should pay for it. I never ended up paying for it. So no, I think the free versions are more than enough with what you're trying to accomplish. They, you know, even my pretty little cherry blossoms background was part of the free version. I did have some colleagues that did have the paid, and they did unlock some more you know, tools, but for what I needed, the free was fantastic. So I would say use the free. If you really want to go to that next level, fine, but not necessary. Thank you.
Okay, so if your school provides the paid, use it. If not, you're good to go. The communication plan that you mentioned is a pretty powerful tool. When do you suggest that our teachers share that with their students?
So as soon as possible, you know, if you do get that student listserv of email addresses, or even if you don't and you have to wait for that first day, as soon as you get that list of who's going to be in your class and a way to reach out to them, send it to them. You know, the sooner they have their hands on it, the sooner they can start understanding what the school year brings. That jitters, right, kind of starts calming down, and they start really looking forward to what the school year brings, because it's new for everybody. So I would say try to send it out as soon as possible, and definitely day one.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. That concludes our third session in this series. We hope to see you all next week. And feel free to use our inbox for anything else you feel that may be useful that we provide to our K-12 community. Click-12 at FIU.edu. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.